And so bringing us back to basics today, our board president, please help me welcome John Duffy.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am John Duffy, a member of Unity Center of Davis since about 2012. And I'm currently serving as our Board of Trustees president, alongside our very own Reverend Richard Carlini, and that sound-alike dynamic duo of Marcia and Marcia, that is Marcia Denault and Marcia Ciccato. Way back in September, at a mid-afternoon coffee gathering in Davis, Reverend Rich asked Don Morrill, Joy Duffy, and myself, what area of spirit and expression do you like to see and hear about in our Sunday services? Well, without hesitation, I replied, back to the basics. Well, I'm not sure if it was before or after that September meeting that Reverend Rich reminded me of how we kick off our annual pledge card program by inviting the board president to present the Sunday lesson. Oops, no way out of this. So going back to the basics, or going back to basics, I prayerfully considered a path to spiritual enrichment simply by having a joyful connection with each of you while being in sacred service to our spiritual community. I've had lots of time since September to consider just why I feel so drawn to going back to basics. And I've found and put together what I think is an exciting story to share while revealing a bit of personal history. Let me change pages, and I'll be doing that several times. So let's go back in time, back to the summer of 1953, where I spent much of that summer in mask, fins, and snorkel, splashing around the swimming pool at Fort MacArthur in San Pedro, home to the Port of Los Angeles, now famously part of the dreaded supply chain to world commerce. Well, after nearly 3 months of studying rusting bobby pins on the bottom of the pool, my buddy and next door neighbor, Garwood Judd, and I were guided to walk the 1/4 mile down to the shoreline of the harbor. And with a mighty leap of faith, we jumped into the salty water. I was rewarded with a view of fish, crabs, clam siphons, seaweed, Gorgonian corals, barnacles, and a host of other marvelous sea creatures. And like the fish on the end of the line, I was hooked on diving. Let's fast forward now to the summer of 1960, when I took a 100-hour scuba training class taught by Jim Stewart from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Successful completion of this course would qualify me to dive for the UC Santa Barbara biology department, where I was in my 3rd year of study in analytical biology as a marine life specimen collector. Once certified, the university required that us divers make a minimum of 12 dives a year. And I can hear Reverend Rich right now. Practice, practice, practice. That's right. We had a lot of practicing to do. I should have practiced peeling my pages off and setting my holder up. So I'm going to share my screen again for a moment, as I now think that what I'm going to share now will have a greater impact if you can see the words as I read them. These are taken verbatim from the January 11th, 1962 UC Santa Barbara regulations covering the use of scuba. And this is paragraph A1. The individual diver must realize that ultimately he is responsible for his own safety. It is the diver's responsibility and privilege to refuse to dive if, in his judgment, conditions are unsafe or unfavorable, or if by diving, he would violate the dictates of his training or these regulations. Yes, it does say responsibility and privilege to refuse to dive if, in their judgment, conditions are unsafe or unfavorable. The Fish and Game version of this paragraph adds the concept that there will be no repercussion or reprisal for this refusal. Reverend Jim's renunciation from last week at its finest. And we'll come back to this concept a bit later. So it's on with my story. After finishing college, then working for my uncle, Uncle Sam that is, for 2 years, I became a commercial fisherman for a year. And in November of 1965, that was 56 years ago this month, I went back to San Pedro for Thanksgiving dinner with my folks. While I was home in San Pedro, I visited with John Fitch, a marine biologist with the California Department of Fish and Game, and one of my old newspaper customers. John had often allowed me to accompany him on skin diving trips while I was in junior and senior high school. John asked me if I had applied to take the Fish and Game exam. I replied, no, I didn't know about the test. He gave me the details, and I contacted the state personnel board. Then I took and passed the exam. And on June 1st, 1966, I went to work for the California Department of Fish and Game as a junior aquatic biologist. It didn't take me long to find out about their diving program. And in 1967, I successfully passed the week-long diver certification class. Then from 1968 until I moved here to Sacramento in 1988, I served on the department's diving safety board, where I was working under a similar set of regulations, including that one about the individual responsibility and privilege. Not salt water, but it still tastes good. So the short version, the important part of my 20-year work on the diving safety board is this. The 1-week certification program for department divers is just the beginning. Every year, all department divers would spend 3 days in a refresher recertification class to demonstrate and practice all the survival skills needed in the diver's safety toolbox. A fitness level sufficient to complete a 1,000-foot swim in less than 10 minutes in the pool or 12 minutes in the ocean, to swim underwater 75 feet on one breath, to buddy breathe, to ditch and recover your tank, mask, and weight belt from a depth greater than 15 feet, and such other creative tests of skill and daring that might be devised from time to time. Every year, back to basics. Practice, practice, practice. During all that time, we had no diver deaths, not even a close call. Well, as near as I can tell, this sums up the how or why I've been guided by my past to have such a strong consciousness of back to basics. Now I'd like to take a look at the ways this consciousness plays out in our Unity Center of Davis community, starting with the Sunday service and our and our announcements. What's the very first announcement? Each and every Sunday, including today. That's right, and I'm sure you got it all perfectly. Our vision is a world transformed by divine love. And our mission statement, we radiate that divine love through prayer, spiritual enrichment, joyful connection, and sacred service every Sunday morning. Each member of our UCOD family goes where? Back to the basics. Now, let's take a peek into a subset of our UCOD family, our Board of Trustees. Many of you here today are either current or former, some of us are both, members of the Board of Trustees. And I bet you'll feel comfortable with the insider knowledge on what I'll share next. Oh, but I'm not going to make it easy on you. Before we move forward, let me take us back again one more time. Where? Why, to another example of my lessons in Back to Basics. Now it's back to June of 1966, and I've just started my first real job with a regular monthly salary. I'm married to my first wife for nearly a year now, and without thinking too much about it, I create a monthly budget for the two of us. Based on what I know the department has pledged to pay me for the next year, I choose to include what else? The basics, rent, utilities, food, insurance, etc. And yes, now 55 years later, while hardly anything in my life is the same, I'm still creating a monthly budget for us at home each year. So how do you feel about hearing the number 2022? Kind of scary? Or are you ready for the new opportunities the next year is going to offer us? I know your board, under the leadership of Reverend Rich, is and will be working hard to prepare us for whatever we have to deal with. Will we move to an in-person service format? Will we remain a Zoom-based virtual community? Or will we create a form of hybrid service? How will we keep our growing distance-based members engaged in whatever format we create? Will we see a return to pre-COVID-19 life or enter into a whole new paradigm? Questions, lots of them. And so far, not too many answers. No matter, our board will work and play for the best possible outcome. Already, we have enlisted former board president and treasurer, Patricia Wright, to create a draft budget for 2022 that looks to balance both in-person and online services. Of course, Patricia could only use our current income projections, projections that were based on the pledge cards you submitted in November of last year. And in that context, I'd like to now invite Patricia to share a few words on the value of the pledge card to our community and family.
Thank you, John. You know, budgets don't answer every question. I've dealt with budgets in my career and as a member of the board of this church many, many times, and none of those budgets have ever been accurate, not 100% accurate. They've always been our best estimate of what we know in the moment. And then as a board and as a community, As the real facts become clear, we then can adjust our actions commensurate with the amount of contributions that we actually receive. But to start the year, it really helps to have a vision of what that budget will look like. And this community has just been amazing in their commitment to recording what they take in prayerful consideration. They really, I think each of you gives a lot of thought and prayer to what is right for each of you to contribute to our congregation. And so I encourage you again this year to take that time and be thoughtful, prayerful, really looking at what it means to you to give and to give to Unity Center of Davis. And we appreciate the fact that you're willing to take that information and put it in writing. There's something about putting it in writing that makes it a little more concrete, and then sharing that information with the board. Now, actually, usually it's just John or the president or the treasurer of the board that looks at that. Normally, not everyone is made known what people contribute. That's your personal business, and we have always kept that as private and used it only for the need to create our annual budget. And so I thank you in advance for that. And I think the most important thing about this whole concept of creating a pledge, committing your pledge, is really about acknowledging your own prosperity. And I know for me, I just so believe that I receive everything I need at all times, that the universe prepares me and presents for me opportunities for my good all the time. But I don't express it as well as I've read in the Daily Word. And when I was preparing for this few comments, I was looking at, in October, I had saved and clipped the October 18 prosperity reading in the Daily Word. And then wouldn't you know, today, the reading today, the word today is prosperity once again. And these words really reflect my true belief. And so I want to share them with you. From the October 18, prosperity is a state of mind. When I know with absolute faith that at the level of spirit, I have everything I need, I feel prosperous. I know prosperity is not the money in my bank account, but the richness of my love spirit, faith in the ever-renewing plenty of God, and willingness to give freely and receive gratefully. Giving from a consciousness of abundance, I bless others' lives through acts of generosity and loving service. A divine idea, prosperity never diminishes when it is shared. It always and only grows, blessing everyone it touches as a circle of sharing expands. And to continue that thought with today's reading, a portion of that says, the divine idea of prosperity is unlimited, more than sufficient to meet every need. I know true prosperity when I live from this truth. Giving freely and generously keeps prosperity at the forefront of my consciousness. I know the more I give, the more of myself I place into circulation, the more I will experience. As I give of myself, I increase the flow of prosperity in my life and in the world. And so I'm just a little bit self-centered when it comes to giving to Unity Center of Davis, you see, because I want this community. I want it to exist. I want it to thrive. I want it to grow. And I want each of you to have the opportunity, no matter what the board decides with our resources, what type of service we can have, in person, Zoom, hybrid, whatever it is. I know the most important thing is that we stay connected as a community. And so I really appreciate each and every one of you and your willingness to show a portion of your commitment to the community by recording your pledge on the card and returning it to us, knowing that each and every one of you are so blessed and so appreciated. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Tricia. Yes. And that's so much. I love it that what I have to say in wrapping up is going to dovetail extremely well with what you've just shared. But before I wrap up today's sharing, I know you're all wondering, when is he going to talk about that individual diver's responsibility and privilege that he talked about earlier? So to paraphrase the concept as it may apply to our pledge card program, just think of the individual congregant's responsibility and privilege to choose how best to respond using your own judgment to our request. The bottom line is, you get to choose. Now, in the spirit and consciousness of today's theme, back to basics in case you've forgotten, I want to invite you to bring our mission statement to life in a 3-step program. First step, make space and take time to enter into prayer. Your own personal prayer relative to Unity Center of Davis. Perhaps you'll look at the ways our family feeds and supports your spiritual enrichment with classes, Sunday services, or in other ways that I can't begin to fathom. Second step, while in that consciousness of prayer, take time to examine in detail the joyful connections you have within and even outside our UCOD family. Maybe make a list and even let it loop back to how those connections feed your spiritual enrichment. Take time to bask in the glow of the images you create for yourself. And the third step of any 3-step program requires action. It will require action. Hopefully, you will have looked at how your UCOD family helps serve your spiritual enrichment and your joyful connections. Please take the pledge card that I will mail tomorrow or Tuesday with gratefully acknowledged help from Marcia and Steve Chicato. Anyway, please take that pledge card, go right ahead and fill it out and send it back to us. Our bookkeeper, Richard Fujinami, is actually the only person who will see what you have pledged. Will include a self-addressed envelope that I won't open. I will deliver directly to Richard. He's the only person who will see what you have pledged. That's right. It is a contract between you and God. Richard will compile all the numbers and create a summary report with no names, which the board will receive and will use to create our 2022 budget to move us forward. In wrapping this up, let me take us back to basics one more time, or our ABCs. I've been watching our recent Sunday services with an eye to the process since today was my turn. I've taken a few notes, and one thing that always stands out is acknowledging beautiful contributors. Our Zoom operators, Kevin and Marilyn. Our recording guru, Robert. Managing the flow is our platform assistant, Patricia. Moon provided us with our announcement information from slides produced by David and Harry and shown by David. Audrey has held our prayer consciousness throughout this entire hour. And Narian and Janet for giving us an earful of beautiful music. And finally, the wizard behind the beautiful curtain, Reverend Rich. Oh, wait a minute, that wasn't the final thank you. The final thank you goes to all of you who are here as attendees. For without your presence, this would have just been a really good rehearsal. Now, let's see if we have some closing music, and Patricia will take us to the breakout rooms for more sharing.